Hello and welcome to the Hoop Collective podcast. We talk about the NBA, which we're doing on Tuesday night. Joining me from Oklahoma City, where he's there on a mission, but we're really happy to have him. He's here promoting a book, which I would love to hold up, but this is a Disney property, Drew, so I can't hold it up. It's called Stop BSing Yourself, except for it doesn't say BSing. I guess I could have made Jackson like pixelated out. Anyway, you call yourself a skills coach. Other people seem to call you a trainer. Drew Hanlen, skills coach to the stars. What is your official title, Drew?
To be honest with you, I'm kind of a little bit of everything. I'm part-time trainer, part-time therapist, part-time best friend, part-time, propaganda machine on Twitter to shut down, bad rumors of my clients, stick up for them. So I am basically the guy that is trying anything and everything to help my players on and off the court at all times.
Yeah. So, Drew has, how many NBA players are you working with now? Like 20 or something?
12 full-time guys.
12 full-time guys. Well, go through your list so people know, your bona fides are known to people who know, but let's just establish.
We got a lot of them, from Joel to Jayson to Brad Beal to Zach LaVine to Tyler Hero, Trey Murphy, Giannis, Chet, RJ Barrett, Tyrese Maxey, Tyrese Halliburton, the list goes on and on. But the thing that I think is cool is I think in today's day and age, there's a lot of trainers that end up working out guys when they're in their certain cities. But for me, these guys are full time. I've been with Brad and Jayson since they were 13 years old. I've been with Zach LaVine and RJ and Joel and all those guys before they ever played an NBA game, and been with them throughout their career. And then during the season, I'm traveling to them. Hence why I'm in Oklahoma City right now. And then also after every game, I'm providing film work for them and analytic, work for them. So it's not just like the rebounder that passes to really good players. It's like we're doing film studies. We're working on the mental side of things. We're working on strategic side of things. And then also, digging into the basketball game as well. So it's kind of a full service moment of, doing anything and everything I can to help these guys out. Yeah.
Well, and your book is really, would you call it a self-help book as well? It's about basketball, that you tell some basketball stories in there, but that's life. It's a life coach book, which I'm sure you're doing some of that too for these guys.
That's what it's all about. To be honest with you, it doesn't matter how good at basketball you are if you don't have the confidence to use that. And so for years, I've helped my players, overcome plateaus and be able to, get past the doubts and insecurities that everyone faces, no matter how good you are at sports. And so that's really what the book is. It's, I've used this process to help a ton of guys become all-stars, become all NBA players, MVP, scoring title, assist title, all those things. But then when I helped my dad use the exact same system, lose 90 pounds in a calendar year, I was like, okay, listen, I'm doing a disservice not to share this system and the strategies with everybody. And so that's when I finally, put pen to paper, and 120,000 words end up becoming a 40,000 page book that, I'm really proud of.
And Ramona Shelburne is with us from LA as well. I know you've known Ramona for a long time. I don't know if she's ready to come on the microphone yet, but we'll get here in a second. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hey,
sorry.
What's up? What's up? How are you?
Anyway, Drew. Yeah. So Drew, like, I'll give you an example of what's in this book. So there's a story in the book where you talk about how, I don't remember what year it was, but like 4 or 5 years ago when Bradley Beal was with the Wizards, he had averaged like 25 points a game. And you were like, Brad, I want you to average 30 this year. And, Brad was like, it's like nobody averages 30. There's been like 20 people average 30 in the history of the game or something like that. And you were like, no, but what I need is you need one more attempted 3 a game, one more attempted 2 a game, and one more one more shooting foul, 2 more free throws. And the way that you go through that process about how you goal set and you break goal set down differently. Like, I assume that this is the kind of stuff that you do with players regularly. By the way, he averaged 30 the next 2 years. But you discuss stuff like that in storytelling within that book.
So much is mental. So much is mental. You and I were talking off camera, I'm down here in Oklahoma City with Chet. Chet coming back to a team that, he was playing at an all-star level, before he got hurt and injured. He was impacting winning on the defensive end as well as offensive end. Now he comes back to a team that's a number 1 seed. There's mental challenges with that. You want to, be as dominant as you were so that you can, contribute to him, winning as much as you can. You also know that for the ultimate goal to happen of winning a championship, you have to be at your best, but you also don't want to come in and step on toes and ruin the system that's been working and that's led them to, this dominant performance this far in the season. And so that's what it's about. It's about helping these guys, get so mentally sharp that they have the confidence to do whatever they need to do to impact winning at a high level. And so there are times where it's individual, like Brad, where he knew Washington wasn't a contender. He needed something to motivate him night in, night out. And so his challenge was, how great can you be individually? There's other times where it's like, Chet, how can you impact the game without getting the volume, the touches, the usage that some of these other stars at your age, at your skill level, at your capability get? And so, that as much as people think, oh, it's easy, he plays on a great team, all he's got to do is just go out there and play hard and everything will figure itself out. It's hard when you're looking over your shoulder and saying, well, I'm getting, there's 78 players in the league that are shooting more field goal attempts than me, but I know that I'm not the 78th best player. That's hard for young players. It's hard when you're looking and you're going, man, every single time I play against Wemby, you see, we're right there neck and neck, but Wemby's getting all this, opportunity, and he's being able to be a franchise leader. Whereas now I'm asked to come in here and shoot 11 shots a game, which is a lot different role. And so I think being able to really balance that is part of my job. It's not just showing somebody how to shoot, how to dribble, on film where they can be more aggressive. And I think that's something that fans don't understand, is that NBA players go through the exact same stresses and struggles and insecurities and doubts that everyday people go through. It's just theirs are all magnified because they're on TV and people are talking about all of their, stresses, struggles, and insecurities online.
Yeah, I've said this before, that based on my knowledge of being around NBA players, and I'm not an NBA player, I'm not in the locker room, you're closer to them, their actual work, daily work. But if you could take away the money, and I realize that's a gigantic statement.
Yeah.
If you could take away the money, what is stresses an NBA team is the same thing that stresses an 8th grade basketball team. He won't pass me the ball. The coach doesn't like me. The coach won't play me. I don't like this guy. I got an issue with this guy because of this girl. I want to be on that team. Just like the basics of the game are the same. It's been my experience that the basics of the challenges of an NBA team are not that different from a high school team, other than the fact that they're all driving $200,000 cars, wearing $200,000 in jewelry, and are global icons. Other than that, if you break it down, Drew, it's, on a basic level, and just like on a basic level, by the way, parents are pissed off at the coach.
Yep.
Agents are pissed off at the general manager. It's not really that different. And so the challenges that you're dealing with players going through are challenges that you've dealt with them probably when they were teenagers.
And to be honest with you, it gets heightened as you get up the levels. And so what I always try to tell people this, I heard this one time, a long time ago, and I've used it with so many of my clients. But I say, when you picked up a basketball for the first time when you were younger, you picked it up because you loved the game of basketball. You didn't pick it up because that was your job. You didn't pick it up because that was what you were chosen to do. It wasn't that something that's what you got paid to do. You picked it up because you loved basketball. If you can just look at the sport of, I play basketball because I love it, but then I get paid to deal with all the BS that goes around it, then you'll understand, okay, you're signing up to get paid $50 million to deal with the negativity, the stress, all the coaching, the opportunity, okay, we can do that. If your job is to deal with that for $50 million, $30 million, that's a great job to have. But then you get to play basketball because you love it. And so that's what I try to do, is I try to get people to, tap into that younger child that literally loved the game of basketball. And so many players end up losing that love for the game. They end up losing that same drive that they had when they were younger. And that's when everything plateaus. That's when everything starts going south. And so really, that's part of it, is tapping into that younger child that used to, smile going to the gym, that used to love being able to just compete with their friends on a playground. And if you can really tap into that, that's when you can really get the results. And so, that is what a lot of my job is doing. It's making sure that these people are finding inner peace in here, because most of the slumps that you see that occur on the court start off the court. And a lot of times, if you don't see a player that's struggling, the first thing I always do is when I FaceTime a guy, or when I'm, talking about another player, I'm like, I wonder what's really going on. You know what I mean? You don't just forget how to shoot a basketball. That just doesn't happen. There's other things that are going on that now you can't have the clarity that you need. Now you can't have the focus that you need. Now you can't have the confidence that you need. And that's what leads to some of the things you see on the court. And so, that's what I think is cool about some of these documentaries now that are tapping into, some different sides of people and stuff like that. When you can actually see, what's going on behind the curtain, you're like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. And, the last thing that I'll say about this is I think it's important for fans to understand, but in an average NBA season, let's say a player plays 70 games. They miss 10 games, 12 games for injuries and sitting out for load management, et cetera. If they play 70 games, 10 of them, they're going to be really good. 10 of them, they're going to be really bad. And then 50 of them, they're just going to be average. And fans don't understand. That means 60 out of the 70 games that they play, they're just whatever that night. There's only 10 special games that year. And so fans don't like that. Fans want them to be at their best at all times. But I'm like, everyday people don't go to work and like excel and break their sales record every day. And they don't break their quotas every single day. And people don't go in and just eat the perfect meals every day. It's like, there's a lot of average. And I think that's something that I think is important to realize as well.
So Drew, one of the things that I love watching is your Instagram page all the time, where you, it's always wheels up to whatever city. And then I'm just guessing which star that you're going to see. And because we've known each other for a while, like, you have certain players who you call and you say, I need to come and see you. And then you have other players who call you and say, I need you to come here right now. Who are your needy players? Who are the ones that you call, right? Who are the ones that if you don't call them, they won't call and they'll be in a slump for 2 months and you're like, I can help. What's going on?
I would say they're all needy. They're all needy, but different needs.
Name names, Drew. Come on. Yeah. I know who they are.
That's what I would say. I would honestly say they're all needy in different ways. Like there are some players, like I've been with Brad Beal since he was 13 years old. That means, we've been together for 17, 18 years now. So the guys like him are always going to fight before they reach out to me. They're always going to be like, all right, I'm going to try to figure it out on my own.
Okay.
He's giving me all these tools and resources. He's not going to make the call until later on. There's other guys that like after one bad night, it might be like right after the game before they've even taken a shower after media that are on FaceTime like, yo, book your flight. I need you tomorrow. But I know you want names, but
I know who the names are.
You know the name. So I would just say that everybody's different. And it also depends. Like, my job is to honestly put myself out of a job. Like if I do a good job, I'm trying to give them all the solutions for all the problems. I'm trying to build their mental resiliency where they don't need me. But then they obviously want me because they trust me enough to help them through whatever problems they're experiencing on the court.
Okay, so I'm going to name names. Joel Embiid is the guy that calls you after every game, right? That's the guy that you're there in the lab all the time. And it's the unseen hours. Like people may not see what you guys are doing, but like you guys are constantly working on whatever he's trying to work through.
To be honest with you, Joel, I mean, that's where I always give credit to him. I think that, I've been recently fighting for him in a time where nobody really is fighting for Joel. Just because I think that, a lot of people are like, oh, he's lazy. That's why he's, injured right now is because he's lazy. And I always have to rewind back and I say, guys, this guy picked up a basketball at the age of 16. And, you've seen the viral clips of him playing JV basketball down at Mount Bird, catching the ball, taking a dribble, jumping up and being like, oh, shoot, I'm behind the backboard. And now fast forward a decade later, he's a scoring champ, an MVP, one of the most dominant players of all time. I'm like, you don't magically become really, really good at basketball.
One of the most skilled players
ever.
From that size ever.
And I would argue that there's very few people that could stake claim to being like the most dominant two-way players of all time. And I would say when healthy, at their best, Joel has a case to argue against anybody, and you look at whether it's points per minute, where I think he's still leading, all time, whether it's points per game, where he's up there in the top 5 still, whether it's, dominance on the defensive end, which he doesn't get as much credit as he probably deserves for. Like when you take him off the court, you see Philly's numbers just tank. And when he's on the court, they do really well. And then even the other day, it was funny. I was talking to Kevin O'Connor's and Kevin O'Connor's, was basically, giving Joel trouble for his playoff numbers and stuff like that. And I was like, while I do agree he has not got the job done, I go, Kevin, have you actually looked at what Joel has done, like plus minus wise? And he goes, what do you mean? Here are the numbers. Joel in the playoffs. Remember, everybody hates on his playoffs. When he's on the court, they are a plus 7.5. When he's off the court, they're a minus 8.2. So I'm going, that is a 15.5 point swing. He's not the one that is building the team around him. So yes, Ramona, I think that there's players like that. Jayson's another one. I talk to him almost after every single game. Halliburton, it's all the time, now, because he's really trying to focus on being more aggressive because he knows that helps his team win. But I mean, I think it's all the guys. I think the thing that makes these guys so special is that there's always another level. And that's what the guys that I choose to work with, are constantly striving for, is trying to find those next levels, things that seem impossible, but they keep chasing them. And so they eventually get them.
So I think the thing with Jayson that was interesting is Jayson was like your second client, right? It was Brad Beal first and then Jayson number 2.
Yeah.
And he's a little younger, obviously, than Brad. But when you first started working with Jayson, and I feel like I was the narrator of this section of Starting Five, the knock on Jayson was, is he too nice? Like, does he need to be more of a jerk? Does he need to be more of a Kobe style out there on the court? And when they finally won the championship, it wasn't because he was meaner or more ruthless or whatever it was. It was because he actually sacrificed more. He kind of gave himself over to that. How did you get him to that place? Like, it felt like you were chasing one goal, but then when they finally got down to the end, it was actually a different pivot.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is Jayson just wants to impact winning. You know what I mean? And that's all he's ever been after. The other day, I actually did a book signing in Boston with Jayson, and we showed some Kobe, footage of him working out, and we showed some, high school clips, and we told some high school stories about him developing his mentality. One of the really cool ones was junior year in high school. He loses a state championship because he literally had one shot in the last 12 minutes. And I detail it in the book a little bit more. Then the second year comes back, he's in the state championship. He actually had 27 points. The other team had 26 points at halftime. And so I think that you can dominate and kill without having to broadcast it. And one of the cool things that Jayson said at the book signing that I thought was awesome, because he didn't say this before to me, was he's like, everyone thought that when I won the championship, I was going to be on the podium having receipts and basically putting up a middle finger to everybody that doubted me, everybody that criticized me, everybody.
That's when you should do it. You have every right to do it when you get to that spot.
And he was like, to be honest with you, at that moment, I realized I was never playing to prove them wrong. All I've been doing is playing to prove all the people that have supported me, sacrificed for me, prove them right. And I think that's what makes it so cool about Jayson is he knows all of his fans want him to just go out and be selfish and chase MVPs and scoring titles. And trust me, if you put him on a bad team, he could do all of that stuff. He's that good. He's that talented. And he does have that much of a,
he's having a great year, by the way.
But what Jayson knows is, hey, I might have to sacrifice now so I can succeed later. There's going to be games where you guys want me to take over, but I don't want to lose my teammate in the process. And I know I'm going to need them to win. And so, there are nights where, trust me, I'm frustrated too, when his usage is down. We know when his usage is up. We've seen the correlation between him having the ball more and them winning. But also, the only thing that matters is winning championships, hanging banners. And last year, the Celtics did so in a dominating fashion. And sometimes it meant Jayson just, commanding double teams and passing out of it. Other times it meant him accepting doubles instead of trying to beat doubles. And it didn't matter. The result was that they won a championship, and that's what he ultimately is about. It's about winning championships. He knows guys like Kobe and Shaq, they only won one MVP. That doesn't mean that they weren't one of the best players of all time. It just meant they only won one MVP, but they won multiple championships, and that's what Jayson's trying to do.
Well, if they win this year, though, Drew, and after everything that happened with the Olympics, I know Brian had a front row seat for that. You think he's not going to have the, standing up on the podium with "I want my damn respect" too? No.
I think at the end of the day, he's 26 years old, has a Hall of Fame resume already at 26. He's going to keep stacking up,
true,
first team All-NBA, first team All-NBA.
He's going to make first team All-NBA again this year.
There's going to be a time, and I don't know when, but there's going to be a time when fans look up and go, oh, wait, what? Like, look at his resume. He's one of those guys. And I really do think that Jayson will go down as one of the all-time greatest basketball players ever when it's all said and done. And so until then, we're just going to let them keep judging the results and keep hating on, all the success that he's having.
You mentioned before you're in Oklahoma City right now working with Chet Holmgren during the All-Star break. He's coming off of an injury. You mentioned how you've worked with Joel. He's had to come off of injuries. I think you said in the book, by the way, you played college basketball at Belmont, where which is known for their mid-major success. How was the teams when you were there? It was like 2010, early 2000s.
Dominant. We went to a couple NCAA tournaments. My junior year, we actually broke the NCAA record for largest margin of victory in a season. We went 30-5 that year, and I think our margin of victory was over 20 points a game because we were blowing out.
And you shot a lot of threes, right? You were ahead of the curve on shooting threes.
Yeah, it was crazy because I actually was at the top of the country. So I was 17th all time still to this day in 3-point percentage. My senior year, I shot 48.2%, but that was on 7.5 threes a game. And I look back and I'm like, man, I was shooting a lot of threes back before everybody was shooting a lot of threes, but they definitely let them fly for sure.
But you had, I think you said in the book, you've had 4 knee surgeries.
Correct.
And you're we see in your videos, you can still dunk it, you can still throw it down at 5'11", I believe is what you're listed as.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things. I'll tell you this. I've went through so many injuries, both me personally and me helping guys return to play. You know, Zach LaVine had a major knee surgery, and I remember him getting tested at a 46-inch vertical, 46 after he got his surgery. And in workouts, he still wouldn't dunk because he didn't trust it. And people were like, why is he not out there? He's healthy enough. He just tested at 46 inches. I'm like, you guys don't understand. It's not just health. It's health. And then also you have to trust that your health is there. And then you have to repattern and program it so that you build back that, you know, you see a gap and that you're used to hitting. If you don't trust that push off, that explosion, now you're going to be a little hesitant. And now you're playing a different way. And so there's that mental side of it too. And so I remember with Zach, you know, there was a drill we used to do where he'd have to go dunk it on me. And I'd say, don't worry. I promise you I'm going to get out of the way. And he'd be like, okay, he'd lightly do it. And then I'd be like, okay, dunk harder. Now bump me and then dunk it. And now I'm going to jump up and contest, but I promise you I'm going to get out of the way. And eventually you build that confidence back. Then there's also the side of, you know, getting back cardio wise, which is another hard thing. You know, people that criticize Joel sometimes when he comes back, I'm like, you guys realize that like he's been out, you know, for a couple of weeks and he comes back and drops like a 30-point, you know, 30, 10 and 5. But they're like, he looks lazy, he looks sloppy. I'm like, he hasn't played basketball for 3 weeks. You know, and then he just comes out to the court, he drops 30, 10 and 5. And then, you know, so it's like, do you want to overwork and then you're injured, or do you want to, you know, not underwork, but do you want to, you know, load manage, use your kind of, you know, you're playing out there in the games when it matters. That's hard too. And then you have the last aspect, which is like somebody like a Chet, where he goes through kind of an injury where he goes up and blocks a shot. He gets hit in the chest.
Freak injury. Total freak injury.
Landing, totally freak injury. And those are things that occur all the time where now you have to, you know, now next time he goes to block a shot, what do you think he's thinking about? You know, and so you have to make sure you give yourself the confidence in that regard as well. So,
you know, this is my 22nd year covering the NBA. And one of the biggest things I've learned in that time frame is the sensitive nature of injuries. And I live in a world where there's a demand. When is the player going to be back?
Yeah.
Or if the player is getting close to coming back, is he coming back on Friday? Is he coming back on Sunday? And one of the things that I've learned in talking to teams and players who are dealing with injuries over the years, I've never had a knee surgery. Lucky for me. You know, Ramona was a college athlete. She played college softball. She's had a back injury. She's had back surgery. Yep. So she can know, but I have had such, and I sometimes I may fall short of this, but I have such a sensitivity to players who are coming off of major injuries and what they're dealing with. And I just have to imagine that as you're talking about, like you're working with building Zach back up after a bad knee injury, the process, I mean, most players, if they get 10 years in the league, they're going to have had a significant injury. They're going to have had a surgery, and being able to play after and return back to the strength, like to me, that probably is an area where you have to do some of your most important work.
100%. It's about building the confidence, about building the trust. It's also, you know, you looking at the game and analyzing, you know, are there tweaks and adjustments we have to make so that you can prevent injuries? There's some freak injuries, like, you know, like the Joel one, for instance. Everyone always talks about like, oh, in the playoffs, he's been injured. I'm like, yeah, one time he got elbowed by Pascal Siakam. One time Markelle Fultz ran into his face and he broke his hand. One time he broke his head. One time he broke his finger. One time he went and chased down a block. These are not cardio-related injuries. These are not preventable.
The meniscus injury that he had last year was a weird fall.
You know what I mean? So if there's cardio related injuries, I'd be like, okay, I agree. Like, you know what I mean? He didn't do anything to prevent those, but they're not. A lot of times they are freak injuries. And that's what the majority of injuries are, to be honest with you, is, you know, freak injuries. There are some people that are overweight or out of conditioned, and that leads to, you know, you being off balance or you doing that kind of stuff. But To answer what you were talking about, I think the most important thing is getting them back where they feel physically comfortable with themselves, and then they feel confident enough to perform at the level that they know they need to perform. Because what you don't want to do is go out there when you're not ready, and then now it starts messing with your confidence as a player. Am I no longer good? Am I no longer capable? And that starts getting you.
That's the second time you've mentioned guys questioning whether they're still good. Like it sounds like that's a conversation that you have to have.
I tell people all the time that the reason slumps occur is because you start overthinking or overcorrecting. It might be something where you miss a couple shots and now you start tweaking with your mechanics and you're going, why? Like you knew that old mechanics worked, but they start overcorrecting or they start overthinking. They start doubting themselves. They start second guessing themselves. They start, and that happens all the time. And I really don't think that fans understand the mental side of the game, and there are times where injuries are real. And there are times where players play through stuff. Like I always joke around, specifically with Joel. I'm like, one day when he tells his story and people actually realize what he, all the work that he's put in and all the things that he's played through, people are going to be like, well, if you just told us, we would have been on your side. Like we had no idea.
Well, I do think that's an issue. Like Philadelphia is very, Joel himself, Ramona knows this. Joel is protective of his health status, which is certainly fine. Philadelphia, because Joel is protective of his health status, right. Philadelphia protects it. And I think that is a thing. The fans don't know. That's his choice. He's a grown man. He's dealt with injuries he can. But I do think the public's ignorance and the media's ignorance, not that it were willfully ignorant, does contribute. The lack of total understanding does contribute to the perception. I do think that's something that could change. I mean, maybe it wouldn't make a difference, but I do think it is a factor.
I do agree. I mean, I definitely agree. I think the one thing that nowadays, obviously, the NBA players get paid so much more because there's so much more coverage around the game. But the thing that has been lost, and this is why I respect both of you guys, is because both of you guys are storytellers, which I always appreciate. I appreciate you guys digging and finding ways to, amplify and uplift these guys instead of the world we live in, which is a lot of clickbait and hot takes and stuff like that. And I think that NBA players wish that a lot more coverage was on the positives and the goods instead of, it seems like a lot of times fans nowadays, they just want those takes. They care more about who's getting traded and who has a bad game and, all these trolls online trying to farm engagement instead of uplifting these amazing athletes that have dedicated their entire lives to becoming the best of the best in the sport that they love. And so, I do think it's hard for people sometimes open up because, they're like, hey, I'm going to get criticized anyway. So why would I open up if I'm going to get criticized anyway?
Well, one of the things I thought you did that people haven't really talked about or gotten into that much is the work you did with Jayson this past summer. Obviously, it was tough, the highest of the highs, they win a championship, and then a rough summer with the Olympic team. And even during the playoff run, his shot wasn't where it needed to be. But he's come back. Obviously, he's having a great year. What kind of things did you do with Jayson this summer between the Olympics and the start of the season?
Yeah, two things. I mean, the first thing was just reminding him how damn special he is as a basketball player. I think that sometimes
I feel like you do this a lot, Drew. You're like, by the way, you have a $300 million contract. You have all these. I feel like a big part of your job is telling them that they're good.
I think it's both. It's telling them they're not good enough and always encouraging them to chase those next levels. And then also telling them, hey, you're really special, like when they have those moments of doubt. So it's a constant battle. It's one of those things. Ramona's been able to be around Joel and I a lot, but there'll be times where, like, I remember after he scored 59, him, right after the game, like I had 59. I'm like, well, Brad and Jayson have had 60-point games. You couldn't get one more to get 60. And then he scores 70 against Wemby last year and he calls me, just puts a middle finger up. I'm like, there we go. Now we can celebrate that. But Kobe had 80 something. Like, he's like, shut up. Yeah. Like, and then there's other times where, you're constantly putting guys against each other. It might be for Jayson, I'm going, man, you've never won an MVP, but all these other guys have won MVPs. And then Joel, I'm going, you've never won a championship. It's like the constant battle of, building them up and breaking them down, building them up and breaking them down so that they can get to these special places. But the two things with Jayson were, number one, building the evidence, reminding him, dude, like, you're one of the best basketball players in the world. There's only a few people that can look you in your eyes. If you're really being real, like, there's only a few players that are as good as you are. And then the second thing was getting back to the mechanics that we knew worked. I think the one thing that fans don't understand a lot of times is they think that, like, when the buzzword shot tweak or shot change gets in the media, they think like we're starting over from scratch and doing like one hand form shooting. It's like, we know what works for Jayson's shot. We built it in a pre-draft process. And now what we do is just constantly go back to that. And so there is slippage that occurs. And I don't know why it occurs. Like his natural shot was way over his head. And so if you look at it, a lot of times when Jayson goes through a little shooting slump, it's because he rounds the ball doesn't stay on his right side. It gets way too high, and then the ball becomes flat. So it looks like a two motion, a slow motion shot, versus when he's really feeling good, he's got the ball tight to his pocket on the right side. He's shooting it on the way up, and he's keeping the ball in front of his face where it looks so pure and so beautiful. And so that's really what we did. First thing we did was just get back to like reminding you how good you are. And the second thing was, get back to the mechanics that we knew worked because, over the years he shot it so well.
I hate to harp on this, but he won a championship in June. First week of July, he signs $300 million contract, largest contract in the history of the game. Does win a gold medal. I realize 2 games he didn't play. Does win a gold medal. He comes back to the U.S. and you go, you're still good. You're still a good player. Like,
I mean, literally just so you can map it out. He went to China. He had a thing that he had to do with Jordan Brand, and he came back. And in China, he called me and was like, "Hey, bro, I need you when I land." And I literally was in Boston waiting for him. And we did 2-a-days. The day after he landed from China, he started 2-a-days after winning a championship, signing the biggest deal in history, and winning a gold medal, his second gold medal. That's just why he's one of the best players in the world, is because he's always been about working. He's always been about improving, and it's these guys. That's what I think that, guys should appreciate about these players is like these special players. They crave, they're obsessive when it comes to coaching and feedback and criticism, so they can get to these levels that they can't get to themselves.
Brian, we gotta ask him one more thing before you go to break or something. This summer, I don't know if you posted any wheels up to Athens, but there were some flights overseas, right? What were you doing on those flights?
So funny because I'm at the NBA Finals, and Ramona goes, "Where'd you fly in from?" I said, "Oh, Athens."
That's right. I was there that day.
And then she goes, "Can I mention who you're working with?" And I said,
"Athens, Georgia."
I said, "Don't name drop." And she goes, "Okay." Celtics win the championship, and lead is Drew Hanlen arrives working with this notable superstar. I said, I think people can do the math right there. But, that's the fun part about my job is that, some of the guys that I work with, they love me sharing that they're working hard. So their fans know the gym and sharing clips. Other people like to choose to, keep things more private. And I just kind of always respect that. And as you know, like, trust me, there are other people that choose to do it different ways, but I am one of those people that I'm constantly just going to war for my clients. And so whatever they choose to do, I always say I'm like the GPS. I'm the one that's telling them how to get from where they are to where they want to get to, but they're the ones driving the car. They're the ones putting in the work. They're the ones getting the results. And so I always respect how they go about sharing the work they're putting in, if they're private, if they're open, if they want me to post or if they want me to not post. And so I think people can do the math, Ramona, but as soon as Ramona fired that article off, I got about 100 text messages. Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. So,
but I think but without naming names, because we, on this podcast, even though Brian has insiders on his podcast, but without naming names.
Who goes to Greece?
Or Georgia? I don't know.
Multi-time MVP goes to Greece in the summer.
You're adding details. That is part of that player's brand, though, is the secrecy of not sharing things, of not letting anyone know what they're working on.
Yeah, I think it's, again, I'm all about just getting results. I think that's the only thing that matters. And I think that, it depends on what players want and how they want to go about it. But, I've had to learn that too, because early on in my career, you, as a young trainer, you have this ego where you want credit for everything you do. And as I've got older, I've realized, like, as long as the players know work that you're putting in, as long as the players respect the relationship that you've built and they trust you, that's the only thing that matters. And so, trust me, like if I wanted 1 million followers, I could easily just post all the workouts and the runs and all the things that we do all over the summer. I've chosen to go a different route that's been more behind the scenes and just pouring into these guys when, what I call the unseen hours, the hours that people aren't watching and aren't seeing, but they do end up seeing the results from those hours that we put in.
All right, before you go, real quick, because I know you got out of time. What was your shooting percentage at Belmont? 3-pointers?
Well, my senior year, 48.2. I finished just over 40 for the career.
48.2. That's pretty awesome. On how many a game? On 7, you said?
7.5 a game.
That's a lot.
Okay. 1987-88. I just want to tell you this. One of the crazy stats I've ever heard. 1987-88, as a senior at Arizona, Steve Kerr.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable.
Shot 57% on 3.
On 200. 200 attempts, right?
And he averaged 3 makes a game on 5.2 attempts. And I said to him, I talked to him about that one day. I said, Steve, why did you not shoot 12? Why did you not 10 a game?
Yeah.
And he said, I shot 57%, Brian, because I only took 5. So
he was incredible. Looking back at some of these numbers, I mean, you just look and you go, wow. And again, I'm just
saying, like 2015,
yeah.
you probably, if you only took 5 a game, you might have shot over 50%. I'm just
saying,
of
course.
Yeah.
I honestly wish I would have shot less percentage wise and shot more though. That's why I always tell my
exactly.
Exactly. I wish I would have been firing 12 to 15 shots a game and shot 40%. I was like, damn, then instead of training you guys, maybe I'd be like,
that's exactly right. Do you know what Peyton Pritchard gets paid? I know know because you're on all the Celtics games. That could have been
Trust me.
All right.
I've begged a couple GMs that have offered me jobs year after year, and they're like, one of these days you're going to take a job. And I'm like, I told you, my asking price is the 15th jersey. I don't have to play, but if you give me a minimum contract, I will be a player coach. So that is always my negotiation tactic. No one's taken me up on it, but one of these days I'm going to convince a GM, if he really wants me on the coaching staff, to give me the last jersey on the end of the bench.
Good luck. All right, Drew Hanlen, thanks for your time. Again, the book is Stop BSing Yourself, except it's not BSing, it's the full word, but you'll see it. Thanks for your time. We'll see you down the road, and thanks for spending some time in the Hoop Collective.
Awesome. Appreciate you guys.
Okay, back here on the Hoop Collective with Ramona Shelburne. Thanks to Drew Hanlen, who joined us earlier. Coming out of All-Star Weekend here, we're not going to talk about anything that happened on Sunday, Ramona, because I've just banned it. We're not going to talk about it on this podcast. But I thought, we were just talking a minute ago, I thought you took something that came out of All-Star Weekend that you think was a little bit more tangible than anything of that popcorn that was on Sunday night.
Yeah, I mean, look, so much of it was made of the format and LeBron not playing, et cetera. But I don't know. I thought that Anthony Edwards quote where he was asked about Victor Wembanyama, and are you the face of the league? Can you see yourself as that? And then he said, no, they got Victor Wembanyama for that. Right. I'm paraphrasing, but that's essentially what he said.
I think I think he said they got Wemby for that.
They got Wemby for that. Okay. And I thought that was a really interesting quote from Anthony Edwards, because, by the way, Anthony Edwards definitely wants to be the face of the league. He should be
can be.
He's right up there. He hasn't done anything wrong. Like he's in the yes, the Timberwolves are a little disappointing this year.
He's gotten into some controversies. Like he's said some things that
he's gotten fined every day. He's contributing a lot to the NBA charities.
Well, he had that social media post a couple years ago that offended some people, but so he has misdemeanors. Let's put it that way, misdemeanors.
And I think what was interesting about his quote was when somebody says something that to me doesn't ring true. Like I was like, well, clearly he is so marketable. He's a budding superstar. His whole brand is, I'm going to go at my heroes. I'm going to go at Kevin Durant. That was my idol, and I'm going to take my place alongside of him and beat his team. And I mean, that's his whole brand. That's how he lives his life. And I was like, I've never known Ant to back away from something and say, I don't want that. And I don't buy it. But what I do buy is that this whole year he's been getting fined for cursing and getting into it with officials. And when you get fined every other week, and there's a lot, whether it's money coming out of your pocket or just that feeling of getting your hand slapped all the time, there was an interesting use of the word they in that quote. They've got Wemby for that, which I think was more of a, does the league want me to be the face of the league? It was a sort of, I mean, it just led, I thought that was a very, that was a quote we'll circle back on, especially for two Western Conference superstars who will be the faces of the league going forward.
Yeah. Look, this is a topic that has been coming up now over the last year.
Yeah.
It's a classic post All-Star game topic. Like every year it's like scheduled. There are still television and podcasts that must happen on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after All-Star. And so those podcasts must have topics. So let's have a topic about how we're going to fix the All-Star game. Check. Yeah. Let's have a topic about who the face of the league is, because LeBron is old and LeBron and Steph are old. Like let's just do that, because LeBron and Steph
and KD. Yeah.
And KD. So part of it is that. Part of it is that the good young players are European. It's a coded discussion.
Yep.
Who's going to be the face of the league? Well, it can't, Stephen A, I think this week on First Take said that he doesn't think it can be not American. When it comes to this stuff, I default to David Stern. David Stern used to say, bet on the greatness of the game. And I bet on the greatness of the game. And when you say the greatness of the game, you're also talking about the greatness of the players. It's embedded in that sentence. And so I will do that. And a bet on the greatness of the game is a bet also on Ann Edwards. I will say this, it was fascinating. I think The Athletic first reported this, and I've subsequently heard about it. There was discussions. The concept that Phoenix could have traded Kevin Durant, because you mentioned going against his idol. The Durant and Edwards dynamic has been enjoyable for a while. On Team USA was terrific. There was that famous photo where Ant was dunking on Durant from practice. It was a great photo. Kevin just coming back from the calf injury, and Ant lighting him up. And the truth is that they were inseparable the whole time. The concept that the Wolves at least tried to pull off this trade.
Amazing. I
don't know how they could have done it, to be honest with you. I've heard some concepts of what was offered, but the Wolves are a second apron team. So they couldn't aggregate players together. So they would have had to have made a separate, and I'm not going to, I've heard some things, but I'm not going to speculate, but they would have had to have made a separate trade to get under the apron. And then they would have had to put some players together that the Suns
would have wanted.
Suns would have accepted. And remember, they don't have draft assets, really. They may have a little bit because they did the Gobert trade. And by the way, they were not going to trade Gobert because Gobert is not allowed to be traded. So he's signed an extension at the beginning of the season. So you can take any Gobert drama or controversy off there because they couldn't do it. So I think it was kind of a pipe dream, two teams that couldn't do a deal, killing time. There were 26 teams that did a trade. They were, Phoenix.
But they registered interest. And so if this conversation comes up again.
Right. Things can change in the summer. What would you think about the concept of KD playing with?
Wow. I kind of love it. I mean, I can see them. I can see their games working together because Kevin can give you.
I agree.
An outside.
They would be totally I think Kevin would be totally invested in Ant's success.
Totally. Kevin is a hooper. Kevin is like a custodian of the game. He cares about the history of the game. He cares about his place in the history of the game. He cares about the people who came before him and the people who will come after him. He's not. He is very aware of all of that. And so I think he likes the relationship with Ant. I mean, you had a front row seat for that. I don't know about him being in Minnesota. I think we wrote a whole story about how happy he was in Phoenix and wanting to stay there. And I believe that. I still believe that.
Well, I don't think he's going to end up there after the summer, but he definitely did not want to get traded.
No, did not want to get traded.
Not on his terms in February.
Correct.
That is
and
true.
I think it's a really interesting dynamic that we're going to obviously revisit several times throughout the rest of this season and the off season. That's going to keep coming back up. Maybe it depends on how the Wolves finish this year, right? How do they? Because they have ways to extricate themselves from the second apron this summer. It's easier for them to.
Yeah, the apron also goes up. The apron's going to go up a little bit, which will make it easier. But I mean, I don't know. Just to be clear, I'm not reporting that they're going to get back into it.
I love, and what you said about the greatness of the game. I think it's something that when we talk about the face of the face of the league, so much of the time in the NBA we talk about personality. It's a cult of personality. It's not just your greatness on the court. And I'm in Los Angeles. I just was hosting LA radio right now, and I heard what Stephen A. said about can a foreign player be the face of the league, et cetera. I think he's right in a lot of ways, but there's also a giant counter argument right here in Los Angeles in a major sport, and his name is Shohei Ohtani. Shohei, that's America's pastime. He plays baseball, and the face of baseball is a Japanese-born player who doesn't do a lot of media, doesn't have a huge personality, at least outwardly, in the forward-facing way, but he's just undeniably historically great. The man is a legend. He's one of the greatest baseball players of all time. And so we talk so much about who the face of the league is based on personality. Like Ant Edwards, he oozes charisma, right? Like everything he does is interesting and fun to watch. I want to listen to every one of his post-game interviews. I actually thought he was a real actor when he was in that movie with Adam Sandler. Like he's pretty good, as athlete actors go. But the reason he could be a face of the league is because of how great he is. And I think, let's let it happen. Let's let that happen. Like last year, he burst onto the scene because they beat Denver, because he beat Kevin Durant, because he led them on this great playoff run. He's still what is he, 23? Like
something like that.
I mean, we got to just let this stuff happen with these guys.
Well, I would just say the thing about Minnesota, like they did the deal for Karl Towns because it was very hard to have a player of that much salary on their books with where they're going. But whatever, Karl's doing great in New York. But the thing that from being around Minnesota last year, Karl, even though he was the franchise player at one point, clearly he wasn't anymore. Karl was invested in Ant's success. Maybe not every possession. Maybe you could pull out an individual moment or an individual game or a week or whatever. But for the most part, Karl moved aside and was invested in Ant's success. And Kevin would be invested in Ant's success.
I agree.
And not just because he worships him, but because that's the wiring that he has and at this point in his career. And that's, I have not spoken to anybody in Minnesota about what their motivation was for examining that. But I get it. Without speaking to them, I get it. I understand why they thought. Well,
I think also the thing with Karl and Ant, and this is a sort of, because they're not together anymore, but I think it was a fascinating thing to cover and see up close. Ant really had Karl's back. Like Ant really, when Karl had a couple of poor shooting nights, I remember on Mother's Day, they both had a tough game. It was a playoff game. They both have lost their mothers, obviously, and it was, Karl's obviously played out very publicly there in 2020. That was a really tough game for them, really tough day for both of them. And Karl had a really bad game, and Ant stood up for him publicly. Like,
he's challenged him publicly too. He did challenge him publicly.
He did, but he really, I felt like there was others in the organization, like, I don't want to name names, but there was others in the organizations that you felt like, well, it wasn't exactly the most supportive comments there. But I thought Ant really, he challenged him. He basically said, I want you to keep shooting, even if you keep missing. Like, your job is to keep shooting. I believe in you. Like, that's his way of standing up. But he could have piled on. He could have, fired something at him in a way to undercut him, and he didn't. And I thought that was really telling about what his own character as a leader at 23 years old.
Yeah, I think face of the league, whatever gets you through your podcast segment. I mean, we do it. I'm not passing judgment.
There was a lot in that answer, though.
Yeah, I'm betting on Ant Edwards.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever you want, however you want to frame it, I'm betting on Ant Edwards, and he's still very much growing. Before we go, Ramona, Wednesday night league starts again. Makeup game from the Fires. Charlotte comes to LA to see the Lakers. Is it a Mark Williams revenge night? I don't know if LeBron's going to play coming off the foot thing in the All-Star game. Is it a Mark Williams? I've never thought I'd ever say those words. Is it a Mark Williams revenge game?
I think so, right? I mean, he must feel pretty rejected right now. He got all the way to LA, went through all the physicals and all that stuff. They really examined him and then said, nope, get on the plane, go home. Even as disruptive as that is for both of the teams and all of the players involved. So yeah, he's got something to say. Yeah,
I mean, like the Hornets don't ultimately care whether they win or lose. I mean, I shouldn't say that, but like wins and losses aren't the most important thing to the Hornets organization. But you could send a message, and I'm not sure.
Want to win.
I'm not sure that you can like play through a guy who's a role player like that. But it wouldn't surprise me if there was a few lobs built into the offense to just because the Hornets are obviously very frustrated with the Lakers. And the way that went down. And I don't think Mark Williams has played. I don't think he's played for the Hornets. I don't think since he's come back. So
Dalton Connect was there. At the Rising Stars game, has played. He didn't play that first game. I saw him. It was the first game in LA against the Jazz, and then they went to Utah and played another game. And JJ said, he's going to need another minute. He's going to need some time to digest this because that was hard. And I don't know. I've covered things like this before. I remember in 2011, Chris Paul got traded, and then that got nixed by David Stern. We've quoted David Stern twice on this podcast today. And then Lamar Odom showed up and immediately walked into Mitch Kupchak's office, asked for a trade. Pau Gasol came back, kind of tried to soldier through it, but was really never the same guy. I don't know. It's interesting to see how all these guys feel about, having been traded and untraded and you know, if you're Mark Williams now with your reputation.
Did you see those memes? There was on Valentine's Day, there was all these memes on social media about like, NBA Valentines or whatever.
Okay.
There was a classic one with Dalton that said, that showed him like with some hearts, and it said, I'd trade you, but still get you back.
That's great. Yeah.
So that was, he at least, if nothing else from that experience, he has that meme. All right. Thank you very much to Ramona. Thank you to Drew Hanlen. Thank you to our producers, Jackson and Rafa. Thank you for watching and listening to the Hoop Collective. We'll be back with the Tims later this week.